Assalomu alaykum aziz tomoshabin. 100+ plus dasturi orqali yana efir orqali ko'rishib turibmiz. Parlamentlararo ittifoq bosh kotibi doktor Martin Chungong janoblari bilan suhbatlashmoqchimiz. Muhtaram mehmon, sizni avvalambor davlatimizning eng yuksak mukofotlaridan biri do'stlik ordeni bilan mukofotlanganingiz munosabati bilan
Dear
tabrik
Mr.
qilamiz.
Chungong, at the outset of our conversation, allow us to sincerely congratulate you on being awarded the highest state decoration of the Republic of Uzbekistan, the Order of Friendship. This prestigious recognition is a tribute to your many years of dedicated and effective service in strengthening comprehensive cooperation between Uzbekistan and the Inter-Parliamentary Union, advancing the parliamentary diplomacy and implementing important joint programs. It also acknowledges your practical efforts aimed at enhancing the international standing of our country. In this regard, we would like to hear your thoughts on receiving this high honor.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a great pleasure for me to be in this interview with you. It gives me the opportunity to say how appreciative I am of my relationship with this beautiful country of Uzbekistan. You've just mentioned the recognition that has been granted to me by His Excellency President Mirziyoyev. I would like to thank him. I'm very grateful to him for this gesture of friendship in recognition of what, together with him, we've been doing to raise the profile of Uzbekistan and its parliament on the global stage. And as I say these few words here, I am reminded of the fact that when I was first elected Secretary General of this organization, the Inter-Parliamentary Union, the global organization of all parliaments in the world, I promised that I would reach out to all member parliaments. I would not give priority to a particular parliament, but I would like to work with all of them to raise the profile of the Inter-Parliamentary Union to help us realize the vision that our founding fathers had. That is of promoting dialogue, parliamentary diplomacy for the development of the world, a peaceful world. And I did see that this vision is aligned with President Mirziyoyev's vision for this country. Both of us came to positions of leadership at virtually the same time. Me in 2014, he in 2016. But it so happens that our two visions aligned with each other. And I want to thank him for recognizing what we have done together at the Inter-Parliamentary Union and himself, the leadership of the parliament, to put the parliament of Uzbekistan, the people of Uzbekistan, at the center of the global stage. It is an encouragement for me to do more because it is my duty as Secretary General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union to make sure that the welfare of us are taken into account, that we serve the interests of each and every member. And Uzbekistan happens to be a country which has a lot to show. So we were working on a very fertile ground, and I'm very, very glad that His Excellency decided to give me this recognition. He can be sure that I will continue to work with him and other leaders of this beautiful country to be deserving of the confidence that he has bestowed on me.
For nearly a week, Tashkent has transformed into a global platform for dialogue. In your opinion, what key factors were decisive in the selection of Tashkent as the host city for such a major event as the 150th anniversary assembly of the Inter-Parliamentary Union?
Oh, well, you talked about this event being major. It is indeed major. It is what we call the Jubilee Assembly. Before the 150th Assembly, we had been to 149 other locations, but never to Central Asia. And so it is a historic moment that we have been able to relocate the IPU Assembly to a country like Uzbekistan. You asked me why. Oh, I think that it is, one, the commitment of the leadership of this country to parliamentarism. We have seen that in the president's leadership. We have seen it in the leadership of the parliament of Uzbekistan, led by Her Excellency Tanzila Nabayeva. We have seen it in the commitment of other key players. Professor Saidov, for instance, served 4 years in the IPU Executive Committee just a few years after Uzbekistan rejoined the Inter-Parliamentary Union. So there is that commitment, ongoing commitment, that has served as a major factor for us bringing the global parliamentary community to Uzbekistan. The second thing is the progress that has been achieved in this country in various fields. And I think if you give me the opportunity, I can explain this further. But there is a story, a good story to tell about Uzbekistan, and it was important for us to bring the global community to, in a way, discover your country, and also for your country to learn from the experiences of the global community. And it comes at a time when this world is in need of moderate voices. And we found that President Mirziyoyev, the other leadership of this parliament, are bringing forward those moderate voices. So I think we were very right in bringing the IPU to Uzbekistan.
Rahmat Yashang.
It is widely recognized that the initiatives of the President of Uzbekistan, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, played a significant role in bringing the assembly to Tashkent. We would be grateful to hear your reflections on the President's speech delivered from the Assembly's Rose Room, particularly regarding the ideas and initiatives he proposed.
Yeah, I said that the President's vision is aligned with the foundational vision of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. And since I have been associated with this country, I've been monitoring developments. I've been an avid reader of the social media, watch television to try to follow developments in this country. And I see that the actions, the policies that are put in place in this country are very attractive to us, and me in particular. So when we listen to the President in his keynote address to the plenary of the Assembly on the 7th of April, it was just a confirmation of what we knew about the man, about his policies and actions in this country. And he himself clearly stated that his vision and strategic objectives are consistent with those of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. That is, the strategic objectives and vision of parliamentarism. And he gave many examples. It would be a long interview if I went through all those things that he put on the global stage. First of all, he talked, well, in no particular order, I heard him mention the value of dialogue, the value of engagement, constructive engagement, with a view to resolving conflict around the world. He was very clear about this when he referred to Gaza, the war in Ukraine, to the situation in Afghanistan. He said clearly that we should engage with everyone, and this is aligned with the values of parliamentarism. And I want to use this opportunity to congratulate him on the recent trilateral agreement that Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan signed in order to promote peaceful relations between these three neighboring countries. I know that he was the prime mover of this agreement. So this is a clear manifestation and clear demonstration of what he can do to promote peace in the world, and starting with Central Asia. Also, we had very strong views from him regarding the need to address the interests of the people, the need for all policies and actions to be mindful of the welfare of the people. And something that resonated very well with me was his reference to the fact that you have to move from poverty to prosperity. And he mentioned that in recent years, the government of this country under his leadership has been able to lift 7 million Uzbeks out of poverty. What was refreshing to me was that he did not want to rest on his laurels, and he promised to do more. I also heard him talk about sustainable development in general. And talking about sustainable development, he also mentioned green development. That is, development that is carried out being mindful of the need to preserve the planet we are on. So this is a message that resonates very well with us and is in sync with the global thinking about how this world has to be managed. So these are some of the strong messages that we heard in his speech. And there are lots of them, those messages that we can identify with that resonate very well with the Inter-Parliamentary Union because they are part and parcel of our structure, of our strategic objectives. And talking about dialogue, it is what the Inter-Parliamentary Union does every day, and it's what we have been doing here in Tashkent this past week, making sure that parliaments are talking to each other, they're engaging with other stakeholders in order to build bridges between countries so that these countries can live in peace, peace that is conducive to the welfare of the people that parliamentarians represent. And we want to mobilize all of the time as the global parliamentary community.
You have participated in numerous summits and international forums of this kind. In your view, what are the unique features of the assembly held in Tashkent, and what significance does it hold for the global community in the development of parliamentarism?
Again, I go back to what I said earlier, thank you, that this summit is taking place for the first time in Central Asia. Why is it taking place in Tashkent? I have mentioned that, elaborately because of the leadership of this country, the progress that you have made, and our interest in bringing the global community to come and see what is happening in your country. And for us to use this to showcase what parliaments and parliamentarians can do to move this world to a better place. So that is very unique for me, that we're meeting in Tashkent for the first time in the IPU's history. So we work with you because on the one hand, we discuss the values that the organization upholds, the Inter-Parliamentary Union, but we also see concrete examples of how those values are being rolled out in a country such as Uzbekistan, albeit in a very discreet fashion. People don't, I would say, they don't know very much about Uzbekistan, not because Uzbekistan doesn't exist, but because Uzbekistan is not beset by those challenges that other countries in the world are facing. People know about Gaza because of the war in Gaza. They know about Ukraine because of the war in Ukraine. They know about Sudan. They know about the DRC. They know very little of Uzbekistan because you are a peaceful country. You're operating under the radar. But there are good things that we can learn from the Uzbek experience. The friendship of the people of this country, the hospitality, but also the policies that are in place. So we come here, it's of mutual benefit for the global parliamentary community and also Uzbekistan. They are learning from all those 140 delegations, parliamentary delegations that were here this past week. You know, many of them, you talk to them, they say, oh, we didn't know this country, but they decided to come. It was a big gamble for us because you're going to the unknown. Not to me, because I've known Uzbekistan for a while now, so excuse me, but for the others, where are we going? Where is Uzbekistan? But they're coming away this week knowing where Uzbekistan is, knowing what its leadership thinks about the welfare of the people of this country, the credentials that have been developed, strong credentials that have been developed in terms of democracy in your country. You've made great progress. And let me give you one example. I think the president himself mentioned in his speech, developing the role of parliament in this country, giving strong powers to the parliament. It is not every day that the head of state willingly surrenders part of his prerogatives to the legislative arm of government. So this country is making progress in that area. And it's like music to our ears because that's what the Inter-Parliamentary Union stands for. We want strong parliaments, parliaments that are capacitated to deliver on the expectations of the people. And when you look at the institution of parliament, we want parliaments to be representative and inclusive. And the examples of how this is happening in Uzbekistan. We have a parliament where women represent a significant percentage of membership, way above the global average. Not 50% yet, we're working for 50%, but you will agree with me that 37% of women's representation in parliament is, I think, a very good score. So we can build on this. We can build on the fact that parliament is becoming younger. When I met President Mirziyoyev for the first time, must have been in 2021, we were just starting our campaign to promote more young people in parliament. And I asked him in his office, Mr. President, can you endorse this campaign for the IPU and work towards it? And he readily said, yes. A few days later, I received press reports that he had actually in his Youth Day speech in the country, he had referred to that campaign and reaffirmed his commitment to working for young people. And this time, when I come, I see the parliament has 46% of the membership made of people under 40 years of age. This is important. I actually met one young lady who, when I came here for the first time, was a baby in the Children's Parliament. She came up to me and said, Mr. Secretary General, you may not know me, but now I know you. You came here. I am now a member of the Legislative Chamber. This is, for me, a demonstration of what leadership can do, commitment to the causes of democracy can do to a country. And we want this to be something that we can sell to other countries, especially in your neighborhood.
As a result of the discussions and deliberations held during the Assembly, the Tashkent Declaration was adopted. How would you assess the importance of this declaration, both for the world at large and for the future of parliamentary diplomacy?
We had a vision for the Tashkent Declaration. We came here, my colleagues and I, to help come up with an outcome that will serve as a roadmap, that will serve as a blueprint for us to mobilize parliaments and parliamentarians in support of a key area of global governance, which is social development and social justice. After all, that is what parliaments and parliamentarians are all about: building societies that are more just and equitable, ensuring that no one is left behind when it comes to development. So for us, it was important and natural that this outcome document reflect these aspirations. So we are very happy with the substance of this document, which was endorsed unanimously, actually by acclamation, by the 150th Assembly. We are going to use this as a mandate to help parliaments work more robustly towards putting in place policies, allocating resources that serve social development and social justice. And the president in his speech talked about the need for social protection mechanisms to protect the people. He talked about developing initiatives such as employment, education for young people. And I believe all of this is reflected in the Tashkent Declaration. It is very much inspired by His Excellency Mirziyoyev's speech. We think that the document is very clear about the virtues of parliamentarism, that we need to promote our parliaments as key players on the global stage to help address those challenges that may seem intractable on the global stage. So we want to thank the participants in this assembly for having adopted such a very important outcome document. It's going to be there for a long, long, long time. It's going to inspire our own work. It comes at a time when we are set to review our strategy and put in place a new strategy for the next 5 years. So we thank the participants, we thank the global parliamentary community. I think you talked about parliamentarism, and maybe we should at some point talk about the virtues of parliamentary diplomacy.
Uzbekistan resumed its participation in the activities of the Inter-Parliamentary Union in 2017 and in a relatively short period of time has become an active and respected member. In your opinion, what is Uzbekistan's contribution to the development of inter-parliamentary dialogue? Which areas do you believe could serve as a foundation for future cooperation? And finally, do you see the potential for Tashkent to become a permanent platform for global parliamentary initiatives?
Yeah, well, a lot has happened since Uzbekistan rejoined the IPU in 2017. That is a little under 8 years ago. A lot has happened. And this is because I want to believe, and I've seen evidence of that Uzbekistan and its leadership believe in the virtues of parliamentary cooperation, inter-parliamentary cooperation, and parliamentary diplomacy as a whole. I have here a book that has been published on the occasion of this 150th Assembly, and it has been produced under the guidance of an eminent Uzbek, Professor Akmal Saidov. He has been a key player on the interparliamentary scene since Uzbekistan rejoined the IPU in 2017. And I just want to read the title of this. It gives you an idea of where Uzbekistan stands. It says, Parliamentary Pathways, Chronicles of a Voice in the Inter-Parliamentary Union, 2020-2023. This book says it all, that this country, its parliament, its leadership, believe in parliamentarism, they believe in parliamentary cooperation at the international level. And why so? Because there are two aspects. One, parliaments and parliamentarians need to have a voice on the international stage to make international processes, global processes more inclusive of the voices of the people, because parliamentarians represent the people, and the interests of the people have to be articulated at the international level and taken into account in global decision making. That is one aspect of interparliamentary cooperation that the IPU articulates through facilitating the participation of parliaments and parliamentarians in global processes, whether it's at the UN, the World Trade Organization, or other institutions of global governance. It is important because those outcomes need to be reflective of the views of the people. But at the end of the day, when decisions are taken, for example, the Tashkent Declaration has been taken, it's going to go back to parliaments for validation and for implementation. And if they are not involved in the fashioning of these decisions and outcomes, you don't have full-fledged ownership of the outcomes. And so there's no effective implementation. The second component that I wanted to mention relates more to parliamentary diplomacy. Because parliaments represent the people, they know where the shoe pinches. You know, the person who wears the shoe knows where it pinches. And so they know the problems that are facing citizens. When you have two countries at war, the people who suffer are the ordinary citizens. And parliaments have a role to play in protecting the interests of those citizens. That's why we have been keen to promote this parliamentary diplomacy, to allow parliaments of countries around the world to build bridges, bridges in the good sense, not physical bridge, to close gaps, find common ground, which can allow for a conducive atmosphere that leads to peace. So we have parliamentary diplomacy, which is a complement of the traditional forms of diplomacy as articulated by governments, because that's how the international order is designed. But it is important that the voices of parliaments be heard in order to create those climates of trust that are required. And the IPU has been very proud to promote this type of parliamentary diplomacy. We have an example. We are working, and last year for the first time, we brought together the leadership, the speakers of the parliaments of Armenia and Azerbaijan in a bid to encourage them to contribute to the ongoing peace process between these two countries in order to accelerate the return to normalcy between these two countries. It was historic. That is, again, consistent with what our founding fathers, Frederick Passy and Randolph Kremer, told us in 1889 when the IPU was created, that you don't have to go to war. You sit around a table like this one, discuss your differences and find common ground. That is what is informing our work with the two Koreas. We have been dedicated over the past several years to efforts to build normal, smoother relations between the two Koreas on the Korean Peninsula. And during this assembly, we've had discussions with them. The Parliament of North Korea has come back to the IPU after a period of 5 years due to COVID. And so from our discussions, we see that there is that desire to continue to involve parliaments in ongoing discussions regarding relations between the two countries. And we have lots of them. We can mention the Middle East. We have a dedicated committee here in the IPU that deals with issues such as the one that is happening in Gaza. We have the task force on the peaceful resolution of the conflict in Ukraine. So wherever there is conflict, wherever there is tension, we are encouraging parliaments to come to the scene, promote diplomacy, parliamentary diplomacy. It is something that I think is wonderful. And having been involved personally in some of these initiatives, I can say that it is very much appreciated. And sometimes, we can say it very clearly here that you have Russia and Ukraine. There's very little contact between the two of them, internationally and otherwise. But in the IPU, they're engaging with the IPU because they believe in the virtues of parliamentary diplomacy. That is one thing that is very attractive to us, that we came to Tashkent, because for 1 week, you were the capital of parliamentary diplomacy. You provided an opportunity for all these countries to be here, to interact with one another, to look at how they could find common ground in those issues that they are at odds with each other on. And so,
how would you assess the organizational level of the forum held in Tashkent? Would you say that Uzbekistan has succeeded in creating an atmosphere of open and meaningful dialogue, the very principle the IPU leadership has consistently emphasized? Within the framework of the Assembly, a number of new ideas and formats were proposed to renew and modernize the work of Inter-Parliamentary Union. Which of those initiatives do you believe are most worthy of practical implementation in the future?
Thank you very much. I may tell you a secret from the conversation that I had with His Excellency President Mirziyoyev a few days ago. I told him, Mr. President, it looks like there's evidence that for the past 1 year, we have been working day in, day out with the leadership of Uzbekistan to organize a successful assembly here in Tashkent. And I think we are succeeding. And I joked to him, I said, listen, I'm going to send you a bill to pay for our services, my service and the service of my colleagues who have been working with the leadership of this country to organize this assembly. We laughed, of course, being a joke, but seriously, we have been very stringent in our efforts over this 1 year. Professor Saidov will tell you the day-to-day contacts that we've had with the authorities here, the organizing team. You can ask Her Excellency Tanzila Nabaeva. She has had a hands-on approach to the organization of this meeting. You can ask your ambassadors in New York and Geneva how they have been helpful. I mean, Ambassador Lapasov in New York, Ambassador Toff in Geneva, they have been useful in mobilizing participation in this assembly. And that's why today it was not a given, it was a gamble for us to bring the assembly here to Tashkent. We're not sure that we would have such massive participation. But in the event, what did we have? 140 national parliaments, not counting observers and associate members, participating here. So it was a huge success in terms of mobilization of attendance, but also the facilities that were made here. You went out on a limb. The Uzbek people and its leadership, you put in place facilities for the conference venue, transportation, other logistics that made this conference successful. But above all, we look at the success of this conference in terms of its substantive outcomes. We have mentioned the Tashkent Declaration. I don't want to go back to it. During this assembly, important resolutions were adopted, and one such resolution regarded the situation in Palestine and Israel. It was here that overwhelmingly that a resolution to reaffirm the values of a two-state solution in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine was taken here, which is very important. If you are talking of the success of this assembly, you also have to mention that. I think it is very crucial that Tashkent will be known as the venue where the IPU reaffirmed its commitment to the two-state solution. During this assembly, we had no less than 70 side events taking place. What was important was that every delegate could find a niche for themselves where they could go and talk about things that was of interest to them, identify the way forward. We had issues such as the role of parliaments in reducing methane gas emissions. On the face of it, why would parliaments be worried about that? They are worried about that because of the effects of methane gas emissions on global warming. And therefore, this is part of the work that parliaments have to do to stem the tide of climate change. It was at this assembly in Tashkent, and I believe it's one of the key elements of success of your event, hosting that event here. And there are many of them. During this assembly, we celebrated landmark events. The 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, which is the blueprint for promoting gender equality. We celebrated the 40th anniversary of the women's movement in the IPU. And on that occasion, I wish to say that you played a strong role. The leadership of this country played a strong role. Mrs. Nabayeva, as president of the Meeting of Women Parliamentarians here, and as president of the host parliament, launched the campaign that we have just established, the campaign to promote gender equality in the world. We want to use 2025 as a year where we committed to working more robustly to promote gender equality, promote women's participation, promote more gender-sensitive parliaments, and also to work towards stemming the tide of gender-based violence, especially against women politicians, because we have realized that women are discouraged from participating in politics on account of all sorts of abuses that they face online, sexual, sexist violence, but also physical violence. So we want to remember Tashkent as the place where we recommitted to the virtues of inclusive governance through strong participation of both men and women in governance. And it's like a coincidence. I told you that when we launched our campaign on youth participation in Parliament, it was here And I asked President Mizioyev to endorse that campaign. He was one of the first heads of state. He was the first head of state to endorse that campaign. Now we are coming back several years later, a few years later, and we're launching another major campaign with the same objective of inclusiveness. And it's in Tashkent. And we have the leadership of this country through Mrs. Nabayeva endorsing that campaign openly. So it's like each time we have a campaign, we should come to Uzbekistan where we have fertile ground. So I can say that organizationally, logistically, it's been near perfect. I would not say perfect, because if you say perfect, then you're not in this world. Every human endeavor has some element of imperfection, but we have been able to manage that thanks to the flexibility of our gracious hosts here. But I also want to measure the success of this conference in terms of its outcomes, and that's what I've been trying to articulate during this interview.
In your concluding speech yesterday, you noted our organization continues to accumulate valuable experience, and we can say with confidence that we have contributed to the global agenda through 77 different meetings. Could you share your reflections and key takeaways from the Tashkent Assembly in light of this statement?
Yubiley Assambleyasiga berilgan baho sifatida qabul qilsak bo'ladimi? Umuman xulosalaringiz haqida ikki og'iz to'xtalib o'tsangiz.
Thank you. When I say our organization, of course, it's the entity called the Inter-Parliamentary Union, but it's the totality of the 182 parliaments represented within the IPU. Those are the people who are actually the IPU. Those are the entities that own the IPU. And so when I referred to that in my speech, I was saying that the 182 parliaments that are members of the organization have accumulated experience. And it's the sum total of the individual experiences that comes to adds up to tell us that it has been valuable. I mentioned earlier what were some of the major outcomes of the deliberations here in Uzbekistan in terms of gender equality, in terms of peace building in the world today, parliamentary diplomacy, the action to address climate change. But we also had a strong meeting here on health. We are now converting what was an advisory group into a fully fledged committee dealing with health issues. And we're not medical doctors, let me hasten to clarify, but we think that members of parliament need to be informed on the issues of health issues that are facing, challenges that are facing the global community. And they need to be mobilized to, in each country, take measures that will help address these challenges. That's why we are creating this committee. But we also had discussions around the need to combat terrorism and violent extremism. You know, this is a phenomenon that is fueling conflict. And it is in the IPU that we are having those discussions and seeing how we can continue to work to make sure that parliaments are usefully engaged in efforts to fight terrorism. And our approach is more preventive than reactive. We want to nip terrorism in the bud. That's why we talk about violent extremism. We need to address that so that it does not evolve into full-fledged terrorism. And during this assembly, we have been able to make progress in the definition of what we mean by terrorism. There's no internationally recognized definition of terrorism, but we're taking the lead. And one area, let me go back to something I believe we see eye to eye on with President Mizioyev, is the harnessing of artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies. It was very clear from his statement that this is something that the global community should be paying attention to. And thankfully, in the IPU, we are serving as front runners, pioneers in moving parliaments along the path of harnessing these new technologies for the greater benefit of humanity and trying to minimize the risks involved in AI. That's why last year, for instance, we adopted a resolution on the impact of AI on democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. We also adopted a charter of ethics for technological and scientific development, evolution, because we think that it is important to put in place guidelines for the ethical use of these new technologies that would maximize their benefits and minimize their risks. So these are things that we come away with from Tashkent saying we have learned a lot, because the Uzbek side has reaffirmed this, the IPU side, our members, the all 182, including Uzbekistan, are seeing eye to eye on some of these challenges. So there's a unity of purpose, I think, that has come out of these discussions. We, of course, must say, and we are being realistic and pragmatic in this matter, that not every issue that was discussed here was the subject of consensus or agreement, total agreement. And this is inherent in the nature of parliaments. Parliaments are a platform for confrontation of ideas in the hope that real common ground can be found for us to move forward. But once in a while, we do have disagreements. We have tensions rising. But what is important is that we put forward the virtues of parliamentary diplomacy in order to appease these tensions. And that is what Tashkent was all about. We all left here very happy because we had very good conditions. We had very gracious hosts, hospitable hosts who put at our disposal all the facilities that we needed to carry out deliberations in a comfortable and conducive environment. So when we talk of accumulated experience, it's logistical, but also substantive in terms of the meeting of the minds of the global parliamentary community on issues that are relevant to the very survival of humanity. So I'm very glad personally that we're able to achieve what we achieved in Tashkent.
Hurmatli janob Martin Chungong, sizga mana shu mazmunli suhbatingiz uchun katta rahmat aytamiz. Aziz tomoshabin, mana 100+ dasturining navbatdagi sonida biz parlamentlararo ittifoq bosh kotibi doktor Martin Chungong bilan suhbatlashdik. Yana efir orqali ko'rishguncha xayr, salomat bo'ling.